Hi everyone, my name is Nan. I'm a second-year PhD student in Media and Information at Michigan State University. Here is my colleague Bidan from Computer Science Department at MSU. He's a first-year PhD student. We'll be presenting this work together. So this paper is a collaboration between the Media and Information Department and Computer Science Department. We proposed to use deep learning to identify linguistic features that facilitate or inhibit the propagation of anti and pro-vaccine content on social media. First, let me briefly guide you about this presentation. We'll talk about the importance of the work or objectives of what we want to achieve, and then the methodology of how we did it. And then lastly, the most interesting part, the findings. So why is our study important? First, look at the figure from BBC News about how many likes or followers on those anti-vaccine social media accounts. Regardless it's Facebook or Instagram, the anti-accounts grows repeatedly, especially since 2020 when the pandemic starts. Secondly, previous studies suggest that anti-accounts are more powerful of spreading information on social media. Why are they more successful? Since the text is the essence of social media, but the linguistic features remain unknown. And then lastly, previous study focused on binary classification only, whether it's misinformation or not, pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine. So that brings up our goals. Firstly, we would like to identify sets of linguistic features that facilitate and inhibit the propagation of vaccine-related content. Second, we would like to compare whether anti-vaccine, pro-vaccine, and neutral tweets contain either sides more frequently than others. To do that, first we set up tons of keywords that monitor like from previous literature on Twitters and that's related to vaccine, and we monitor those keywords in real time with Twitter streaming API. After we got those keywords, we use machine learning to first classify whether vaccine related or not. For those vaccine related ones, we use deep learning to classify them into 3 different groups: anti-vaccine, pro, and neutral tweets. Lastly, we use LIWC, a software to identify those linguistic features. A little bit background about LIWC. The software calculates a score for each features based on their dictionary. For example, anger. A list of the example that represent anger is heat, kill, and pissed. So for tweets, if it has a lot of those anger-related words, it's going to generate a score for anger feature. And the higher the score, the higher the anger in that sentence. Oops. Next, let's talk about our methodology. We'll talk about our data collection first, then how we constructing or training data sets, then how we classify our tweets. Then we use ANOVA analyze to analyze the different fitting groups. And then there are some LIWC features that were standing out. Lastly, we use regression to see how those features affect the number of favorites and retweets. I will hand over the stage to my colleague, Bidan.
Yeah, so for the data collection part, we collected millions of tweets between the period of November 15 and December 15, 2021, using the Twitter streaming API. Our experiment uses the data from the November 15 to December 15. So for collecting the tweets, we use various kind of keywords related to vaccines, pandemic, and different political words. So we use vaccines keywords like vaccine, vaccinated, unvaccinated, vaxxed, big pharma, and a few other different kind of keywords related to vaccines. Similarly, we used keywords related to pandemic, such as Pfizer, Moderna, virus, Omicron, and booster. Similarly, we also used keywords related to political words, such as Trump mandate. So basically, these were the keywords used to collect tweets from Twitter streaming API between the date of November 15 and December 15. So during this process, we collected almost 1.45 million tweets on average each day. So these tweets are basically the original tweets and also the comments on a tweet. So altogether, so during these periods, during the period of 31 days between November 15 and December 15, we almost calculated, we almost collected 44 million tweet. Next slide, please. So for the construction of training set, we used different sets of data collected between September to December 2021. So using these similar streaming server. But the difference between the training set and then the set used in the experiment is that our experiment uses the data set between November 15 to December 15, but our training set consists of a different data set, different tweets, including different data set. So for this training set, we used 10,836 human level tweets by the experts. So among these 10,836 tweets, 5,994 were vaccine non-related. Similarly, 1,402 were anti-vaccine related. Similarly, 1,875 were pro, and 1,565 were neutral. Next slide, please. So for those 10,000, so almost 11,000 tweets, we use two-step classification for those tweets. For the first, we used logic regression, a simple machine learning algorithm to determine whether a tweet is vaccine related or not. So we use logic regression to find whether a tweet is vaccine related or not. So using this algorithm, we were able to classify the tweets from our data set to determine whether they are vaccinated or not. So similarly, we implement BOT or deep learning algorithm built on transformer. So we use this BOT model to classify vaccine-related tweets into pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine, or neutral. So a simple so our architecture can be seen on this picture. So at first, we use logic regression to classify tweets into vaccine-related or unrelated. And then we use these vaccine-related tweets to classify pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine, neutral, using the BOT model. So once these two models are trained, we use these two models to classify all those 45 million tweets between November 15 to December November 15 to December 15, 2021 to December 2021 to classify whether a tweet is vaccine related or not, or whether it is pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine, or neutral. So moving forward, so next slide, please. So yeah, this is basically our classification results. So we used so on these first column, so these are the few method we used. So logic regression, gradient boosting, LSTM, and bot model. So these are few methods we used for classification of tweets. So on the second column, vaccine related versus unrelated. So this is our first stage classification, whether to determine a tweet is vaccine related or unrelated. So and then similarly, the third column is our second stage classification to determine whether a vaccine-related tweet is pro, anti, or neutral. So for this both model, so for this both classification tasks, um, so fine-tune bot model performs better and outperforms all other three methods. So thus we went with the BERT for pro and BERT to determine whether a tweet is pro, anti, or neutral. Similarly, we decided to go with logic regression for vaccine related versus unrelated, since the difference in the result wasn't that much different. Similarly, on the bottom table, so it is basically the F1 scores for the pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine, and neutral tweets. So these results also suggest that fine-tune bot model outperforms all the other three methods on the basis of F1 accuracy. So yes, our results suggest that the bot models outperforms other three methods: logistic regression, gradient boostings, and LSTM for both both stage for both two-stage classification tasks in our experiment. Yeah, so these are all our classification results. So next slide, please.
Thank you so much, Bidan. Let's take a look at our descriptive data. So because we have so much tweets, we did a randomly sampling and select about 1.1% of our entire data set. Out of those 50,000 tweets, neutral group almost have like nearly half of the tweets, while anti has slightly more than pros. And then since we're interested in the propagations, so we further looked into those that are retweeted at least once. However, there are about 16,000 are replying to tweets. So that's leaving us have about 4,000 original tweets that has been retweeted at least once. So let's get some preliminary impression about the difference in groups. Weeks are pretty similar because we're 1 month period and there are like 5 weeks in that month. And then anti and pro gets more retweets than neutrals, while anti has slightly more than neutrals. And then for favorites, anti and pro also get more than neutral, but this time anti get much more favorites than pro groups. For followers, neutral group actually have a lot of followers compared to pro and pro has more than antis. Even though they have much more followers, sorry, now seeing my second screen. The number of friends are pretty similar between three groups. And then next, because our ANOVA results were significant, we conduct a post hoc comparison to examine which specific vaccines class differed from others in terms of each dependent variable. So first, the predict class did not differ across weeks, which means that although tweets were retweeted more earlier in that weeks than later weeks, there was no significant different pattern of retweets between classes. And then secondly, pro-vaccine tweets garnered significant more favorites than both anti-vaccine and neutral tweets. And then third, neutral tweets had significant more followers than both pro and anti. And then third, anti-vaccine tweets had significantly more friends than neutral class, but there's no difference between any other pair. Next, we regressed the log transform number of retweets and then log transform favorites separately on all those independent variables. So first, there are weak, and then there are about 92 LIWC features, and then the log transformed number of followers, number of friends, and then the probability of anti-vaccine, pro-vaccine, and a neutral class. Let's take a look at our regression results first. So the weak is not a significant influence on predictor of the retweets. However, friends has negative, friends let's see, friends has a negative impact on retweets, which is kind of contradict with a common belief. Out of those 92 LIWC features, only those 14 results that's significant. And for pronouns, whether it's first person or third person or second, those had significant negative impacts on the number of retweets, whether it's pro or anti or neutral. So all the next, here is our regression results for favorites. So for favorites, let's see here, pro-vaccine get more favorites, while when anti-vaccine does not. And then the neutral traits even hamper the favorites. Followers where its positive impact among three group with no adopts. And then friends again has a negative direction. And those, there are about like 22 LIW features has significant effect favorites. And then for Twitter, for tweets that contain first, second, and third person pronouns, such as we, you, she, they, and they have negatively effect on favorites. So those significant predictors, they even remain pretty similar regardless of the vaccination classes group. So let's see our comparison of LIWC results among the three groups. First, for pro versus anti, pro group has more significant, more first, second singular and plural, and then third person plural pronouns. And then it also has more affiliations such as ally, friend, and talk about society stuff. They also use more authentic features. Authentic means that the writing was honest and personal in nature, which may explain why pro-vaccine tweets get more favorites than anti-vaccine tweets. And also anti-vaccine actually has more tweets, so which means pro-vaccine has fewer quotes. We believe that anti-vaccine has more quotes to make so that way they have like getting more retweets and favorites because that's their attempt to make the claim more like legitimate and credible, thus they get more retweets. So in contrast, from previous studies that they think anti-vaxxers are making more efficient, like more emotionally appeal, we did not find any significant difference in terms of engagement or data set. And then for another significance that's standing out is pro versus neutral group. They use much more exclamation marks. And then next, let's summarize some general findings. Out of nearly 4,000 retweeted tweets, neutral is half of the tweets, while pro is slightly more than anti. And then our two-stage framework that's using fan-turned Borg classifier outperforms the conventional machine learning methods, such as logistic regression, guaranteed boosting trees, and LSTM, in terms of the accuracy in whether it's vaccine-related or into 3 3 different groups. And the third, anti-vaccine tweets get more significant, more retweets than pro-vaccine and neutrals, while pro-vaccine tweets get significant more favorites than anti-vaccine. And then the number of friends had more significant but negative effects on both retweets and favorites. Those results suggest that the number of followers is better indicator of propagation of Twitter than that of friends, which may be more appropriate for other networks such as Facebook. Then regarding our first research question, identify sites of linguistic features that facilitate and inhibit the propagation of vaccine-related content. We found that to get more favorites and retweets, it's important to be authentic and expressing angers and highlighting the discrepancies and focus on the past, also quote others. So there are some linguistic features that only get retweets but not favorites are affiliation and perception. The most important, the negative effects that's not using is pronouns, regardless first, second, and third person. Then for our second research question, to compare whether anti-vaccine, pro-vaccine, and neutral tweets contain either sides more, pro-vaccine contain first and second and third person pronouns more than anti-vaccine. The use of those pronouns has significant and negative effects on both retweets and favorites. So those results may explain prior finding that many pro-vaccine message mock and attack anti-vaxxers. And then pro-vaccine tweets using authentic is associated with more honest, personal, and disclosing text. Those linguistic features may explain why they get more favorites for retweets posts than anti-vaccine tweeters. And then lastly, anti-vaccine tweets use codes more than pro-vaccine tweets, which has a significant and positive effect on both retweets and favorites. These results contradict previous findings that anti-vaccine message with negative emotions and the expression of angers. So those are our findings. A few limitations. Although our binary classification accuracy is over 97%, really high, but our tentative classification has room for improvement. And second, our training set is relatively small and needs to update on a regular basis. And then RWC text analysis is a great tool, but future research may consider qualitative content analysis for a deeper understanding of those discussions on social media. That's it. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you, Baidan, for joining us.